Hey guys, so this is your tutorial for Friday, September 25th in case you missed the live session. So make sure you fill out that attendance link. That way you can get credit for being here even if you missed the live. You're watching it here on the tutorial, so you will be counted present. So we're going to talk about today air pressure and density. So we know that air pressure is like the pressure or weight of air that's coming down on us. And density can be described as how compact an area is. And specifically what we're going to talk about is air and the molecules in air. So let's get started. There's a video here that says how heavy is air, and it goes through what the molecules look like at certain parts of the atmosphere, and it's a really great video to watch. It's 3 minutes long, so you can watch it on your own time, but for today's purposes, I want to get into the actual content of the lesson. So this slide says what happens as you go up in the atmosphere. We already learned about temperature and what happens as you go up in each layer of the atmosphere as far as temperature goes. We know that in the troposphere it gets colder as you go up. In the stratosphere it gets warmer. Mesosphere gets colder. Thermosphere gets warmer. But now we want to know what happens to air pressure and density as we go up in the atmosphere. Well, these two things have a very similar relationship. As altitude increases, or as you go up in the atmosphere, air pressure and density both decrease or lessen. You can look at this graph right here. This shows you on the side where your y-axis is. This is the altitude. So as you're going up in the atmosphere, and this bottom area down here, the red shows you air pressure, and the blue shows you the density. Okay, so you see that it's really high density and high air pressure down here by high. It's high density and high air pressure at the lowest point of altitude. So that's in the troposphere. As you go up through the different layers, you see that the red, which is air pressure, is starting to decrease, 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 decrease. And then by the time it hits right here, it's really low. So there's a very low amount of air pressure as you go up in the atmosphere. The same thing you're seeing here with density. There's a lot of density down here at the very bottom at the surface where we live, but as you go up in the atmosphere and your altitude's increasing, your density right here is now getting closer to being low, so it's lessening as you go up in the atmosphere. So let's talk about why that happens. First, we're going to start with air pressure. The best way for me to describe it is for you to think about yourself up here, like this little guy on the mountain, versus being down here, okay? When you're up here on the mountain, you have all this air pressure pushing down on you. But if you're way down here off the mountain or even at sea level, you have that much air pressure plus all that more air pressure pushing down on you. So as you climb up, or as altitude increases, there's less air pressure pushing down on you, okay? So if you look in this picture right here, here you see the guy, you have all of this column of weight pushing down on him, but right here, when he's on top of the mountain, there's only that little bit of air pressure pushing down on him. So the higher up he is, the less air pressure is on top of him. Now let's look about how it correlates with density. So looking at this same picture, as you have the little Eskimo guy up here on the top of the mountain, you see that in this little demonstration here of molecules in the air, the molecules are much more closer together, much more compact down at the bottom, and as you go up, those molecules spread apart, and you see fewer of them, right? So as you go up in altitude, your density is decreasing. It's becoming less dense. There are less particles in a given area. But if you're down here, where your altitude is very low, there's a lot of particles and molecules pushing down on you and all around you. And it's more heavy, it's more dense. Okay? So the closer you are to the surface, the more compact or dense the air is going to be. As you go up in altitude, so as your height increases in the atmosphere, there is less molecules pushing down on you. They're more spread apart, so that means the air is less dense. So your activity for today has you guys looking at air pressure and density like we were just talking about. There's a passage for you to read and then a couple of questions that you will do, and I'm going to go over them and how you're expected to do it. So here is the passage that you're supposed to read. You'll see it talks about air pressure, it talks about density, and it goes over all of these examples and what happens in the atmosphere, okay? You'll also notice there's a little speaker button right here. If you press the speaker button, you will hear me explaining what to do, okay? So just to give you an idea. On this first slide, all you have to do is read the passage. Make sure you pay attention to what it's saying and that you're looking at what's happening in each layer of the atmosphere. Okay, so we have these little speaker buttons so that you can hear what you're supposed to do on each slide. On the next slide, you see that it says air pressure and density in the atmosphere. This little flap right here says air pressure. This one says density. What I want you to do is insert a picture in this box, cover up this text with a picture that represents air pressure. Anything that you think of that reminds you of air pressure, you can bring and put in this box. Same thing for density. If density is hard for you, Google density, look at the images, and based off what the article told you, find a good image, put it here. Okay? This third flap, there's nothing for you to do here. This is just a statement, and what you'll do is you'll write something under the flap on the next slide. So the statement says the relationship between air pressure and density as you travel through the atmosphere. So underneath this flap, you'll write something else, and that's on the next slide. Remember that there's these little speaker buttons to explain what you need to do. Now, for air pressure and density, air pressure this time, you're describing what air pressure is, and you're going to use the passage, the information you read from the passage. Same thing for density. You're going to describe what density is and use the information from the passage. Now here is where you answered that question from the last slide. What happens to air pressure and density as you go up in the atmosphere? So as your altitude is increasing, what is going to be happening to your air pressure and density? And you can find the answer in that passage. This is a cause and effect slide. So it gives you causes right here, and you have to use the passage to help you come up with the effect. And then it's the opposite here. It gives you the effect, you have to come up with the cause. So if the effect is your ears pop while traveling in an airplane, what causes that? And all of these answers you can find in your text. The last part of the assignment wants you to explain how air pressure changes as you travel from the surface and on out through the atmosphere. You can use the information from the passage to help you write your response, and you'll just type it right here, okay? So that is all you have to do for today's activity is just read the prompt and answer these past couple of slides. And remember, if you forget how to do the slides, there are the little speaker buttons where I give you a description, okay? So if you have any questions, make sure you ask your teacher, and we will see you tomorrow.